Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
To the Fantasy Football Endgame. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're a new-time viewer, then I have a suggestion. Hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up if you like what you see, because we're going to be doing this every single week, giving you advice on who to start, who to sit, and maybe who to stream at each position. Chris, talking about running backs right now, have you survived the Armageddon that is the 2020 NFL season, especially fantasy football as far as running backs? We got two more casualties, as it turns out.
No, I think I talked about this maybe on our first start sit episode of the year, or our second one. I only did 3 drafts this year. I did 1 best ball draft and 2 redraft leagues. I got the number 1 pick in 2 of them, which is Christian McCaffrey. And I got the number 4 pick in our best ball draft and somehow ended up with Saquon Barkley. So, no, I have absolutely not. The good news is in my home league, I do have Kareem Hunt. So, and I was able to get Mike Davis off of waivers after McCaffrey. So I've been okay there. In our flex league, not so much. I'm for sure hurting in our flex league.
Yeah, the league where you think, well, having 2 or 3 good running backs really doesn't matter because you could put anyone in there. It's still you need good running backs to win in fantasy, as it turns out. It's been rough, and I guess the only consolation prize for those who had the either number 1 or 2 pick and took McCaffrey and Barkley is now the guys who had picks 8, 9, 10 and took guys like Chubb and Ekeler. Well, they're screwed too. So if that makes you feel better. So Nick Chubb and Austin Ekeler both at the same time are out now several weeks. Which basically screws you over for the rest of the regular season. By the time they come back, you're almost playoff time, and there's no catching up at that point. So you need guys to fill in their place. These were your RB1s probably. So you've got to pivot somewhere, and you think, okay, well, the waiver wire, there's not much on there. Talked about that already. If you haven't checked out that video, look at the running back waiver wire video. But we're going to talk about some guys that are probably on rosters, maybe on yours, hopefully, and decide, do you play him or not? And also, there's some stars that are falling too. But let's start with the biggest name. First of all, one of the names that was claimed off waivers, probably the most this week. Some people were smart enough to stash Damien Harris of the Patriots. It would seem that after he plays his very first game of the season and goes for 100 yards, right after Sonny Michel goes on IR, it would seem like he's a pretty good guy to put in your lineup. But is it that simple? I mean, we've been fooled before, right? But these debuts where somebody just flashes and then all of a sudden kind of drop off, and we're expecting these big things. And we can't forget the fact, Chris, he's a Patriots running back.
Yeah, I mean, if you grabbed them ahead of the game, if you were smart and you grabbed them off waivers for free before the game, congrats, because at least you have a guy who you know is going to get the bulk of the carries. And right now, that's gold. I saw a tweet, I don't know who it was from. It said something like, I had no interest in drafting Le'Veon Bell before the season, but now I'm begging people to trade me Le'Veon Bell just so I have a running back to play this week. Like, right? That's where you're at. You're like, just give me a guy who's going to get 15 touches. That's all I ask for. Yeah, I like Damien Harris. He's going to inherit like the Sonny Michel role. The problem for him is James White is back, and we saw last week James White, what do you have, like 8 catches or something? So he's not going to get much work in the passing game. This offense, especially while Cam Newton is out, is not going to get a lot of goal line opportunities. Obviously, when Cam comes back, that will help. But for right now, this offense is going to be really bad. Going to have trouble moving the ball. So as of this week, I would view him as an RB3 type. But again, he might be your best option because he's probably looking about 15 touches this week, and there's not a lot of guys out there that are locked into 15 touches every single week. So I'm not like super excited to roll out Damien Harris, but obviously, the volume will be there. So, if you're in a pinch, I think you could do worse.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, it depends on your circumstances, of course. Most people, if you added him this week, probably you need him and you're going to play him no matter what. But that's it. The floor is, I mean, it's almost non-existent. And I'm not just saying that because the whole Patriots running back thing, but he's not a pass catching back. They already have James White, right? Burkhead can catch passes. Harris, that's not his forte. So that's the thing. If he has a bad game, running, that's it, So, and then as far as Cam Newton not playing, which he, almost surely won't this week, it was at least good to see, even a game where, they were behind basically all game, that they were still able to run the ball. They've been running the ball really well all year. So that's at least assuring, but it's not enough to make me think, okay, he's definitely going to have a monster game again. And Denver, obviously not a great team, not a great situation, there, but they're actually allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs right now. So it's not like this is a team that is just automatically going to roll over. So all those things combined to say that he's an okay start, I guess. Consider him an RB3, but I'm not expecting 100 yards again. I don't expect anything from Kenyan Drake at this point. I don't know how much detail we need to go into the fact that you and I both, before the season, and now mainly you listed him as, I think, your top draft bust before the year started. So obviously you're not rolling with him anywhere. I had the misfortune of auto drafting one league where I have him, but that's another story. If you have him, what do you do? I mean, you're probably not trading him for anything at this point. You can't get anything back. You hate to bench him, especially against the Jets, but you also really don't want to play him. So how do you see this particular situation? Again, it's the Jets. That's, I guess, the only silver lining.
Yeah, but last week it was the Panthers. I mean, I said, 2 weeks ago I said on my Risers Followers video, Kenyan Drake's going to smash against the Panthers. Once he does, trade him. Trade him. Get him off your team. Get rid of him. Well, guess what? He didn't. And now you can't trade him because nobody wants him. And I know it's the Jets, and they've given up over 100 yards the last 3 games. They've given up 5 touchdowns over the last 3 games. But so what? It's not even as good a matchup as he had last week, and he did nothing with it. And here's the real problem. And I talked about it in this week's panic video. He's only gotten 5 targets on the entire season. And it's not because Kyler Murray's not throwing to the running backs, because Chase Edmonds has 17 targets. So it's not that he's not throwing to the running backs, it's that he's not throwing to Kenyan Drake. Okay, Kenyan Drake is not involved in the passing game. So all you're hoping for Kenyan Drake is like 16 carries. Maybe he can get 90, 100 yards if he busts out and he scores a touchdown or 2. But that's not what I want to be banking on. Like, basically, this is like a Joe Mixon situation where he's been terrible, and you're just hoping that this is the week. And hey, everybody that rolled out Joe Mixon last week, congrats, you got lucky, and he hit last week, right? And maybe Kenyan Drake will hit this week because it can happen. It's just within the realm of possibility. But man, if I had even a slightly better option, I would not play Kenyan Drake this week. No way.
Yeah, that's the problem. You're kind of in limbo. You're stuck with him because, again, unless you just, sell him for parts, whatever you can get back. But at that point, if you're doing that, you probably would have to have a really solid running back you can put in his place, which is probably not the case. So, yeah, and it's interesting now, this is the second week in a row, I think, or at least 2 of the last 3, that you would think going against Carolina's terrible run defense, it'd be a smash spot, and it wasn't, right? I think Joshua Kelley bombed against them. When we expected. I wasn't going to bring up the whole thing about, Drake being your boom, but since you brought it up, yeah. But same thing. He should have smashed, and he didn't. So, I would like to say bench him if you can.
Okay. I saw a stat today. The Panthers have given up a top 3 PPR running back finish, top 3 in every game but one, and I'm sure you can figure out which game that was. Like, that's as good as it gets right there as far as matchup goes. So I don't know what you're expecting this week. You're just hoping for a miracle. That's it. You're just hoping for a miracle.
No, hoping he falls in the end zone, I guess.
Even if he does, he might only get you 9 or 10 points.
Well, that's true. And actually, I saw another crazy stat talking about the targets, and that's what you thought. Well, at least he'll be involved in the passing game. I think he's either 8th or 9th. I think 8th on his own team in targets. Not 8th among all running backs. 8th on the Arizona Cardinals, right? There's guys who barely see the field who've got more targets than him. So, yeah, that's not a good sign.
No.
And I did mention Joshua Kelley. It wasn't him. It was Austin Ekeler who was effective in that game. Kelley hasn't done much the last couple of weeks. But here's the thing. Eckler's out. We know Kelley's going to be the lead back. Now Justin Jackson works in the mix. How is this backfield going to shake out? Do you think Kelley's still the clear lead guy? I'm a big Kelley stan this year, and I think he's still the guy. But how much the guy is he going to be? Is it going to be like a 60-40 split? Are they going to basically try to run Kelley into the ground and just mix in Jackson? Because Jackson's been banged up. And then do you want any part of this matchup? Because the Saints this week, that they actually have a pretty good run defense.
Yeah, So if we look at last week, the snap percentages, Ekeler only played 6% of the snaps, so we can basically eliminate him. Kelley 57% and Jackson 40%. So it kind of was a 60-40 split. But that was Jackson's first game, right? So I would think this is going to be more like closer to a 50-50, I think. And here's my concerns with Kelley. He hasn't looked that good. Eye test wise, he hasn't looked that good. I mean, he's not like Ekeler gets the ball and he's breaking tackles and things, and Kelley gets the ball and he's just kind of like going and falling down. He's now fumbled in 2 straight games. Like, is a coach like, I don't know if this coaching staff is one of those like, oh my God, he's fumbling and freak out kind or not, but I could certainly see Justin Jackson having a bigger role than Kelley, the people who have Kelley would like. So I think of this more as a 50-50 split, given the fact that it's the Saints. I don't really want to start either of these guys this week, but I get it. If you have Joshua Kelley, kind of like the Damien Harris situation, you probably have to roll him out there because what are your other options? And you got to hope that maybe he is the guy. I just wish – I mean, he didn't – even last week when Ekeler was out, he just did not impress when he came in. He didn't – that was his opportunity to come in, bust some big runs, do some things, make the coaching staff take notice, and he really didn't. I think what he had, like 9 carries for 7 yards or something. I mean, not good, right? So I'm not feeling great about this, but I get it if you have to start him. But in my opinion, I'd prefer not to. I'd prefer just to sit him on the bench another week, see how it plays out, and go forward from there.
Yeah, and, this is it. This is a chance to impress. Like you said, now he really is going to get a chance. And then Jackson, too. I mean, he actually had a really good yards per carry average the last couple of seasons. I think he's at 5.1 for his career. Short career, but still he doesn't get tackled behind line of scrimmage too often. But we'll see what happens at this point going forward. I don't think you can feel too great about either one right now. What about D'Ernest Johnson? Because obviously Chubb is out now. That's the other replacement. Technically, Kareem Hunt obviously is the lead back. There's nothing to say there, right? If you have Hunt, you're starting him anyways. How much do you think Johnson's going to factor in? Because you know what? He looked pretty good last week in relief. I think 13 carries for 95 yards. That's pretty good. Now, again, that was just, half of a game, and they were able to run the ball pretty much at will, do anything at will against that Dallas defense. This is the Indianapolis defense. This is actually the second best defense against the run, top defense overall, right? So that defense is no joke. Hopefully you don't have to start him, but is he flexible at least?
I want to say yes. I want to say he is. And I feel like he probably is because this run game with Cleveland is so good that I think he'll get enough opportunity. I was certainly at first I was surprised last week. Like, I'm like, hey, Chubb's out. How come Hunt's not just getting like every touch, right? Like, why is D'Ernest Johnson and Damian Hillard getting touches? But then I remembered, or somebody reminded me, Hunt was on the injury report all week, limited all week with a groin injury. So I'm sure Cleveland, didn't want to give Hunt tons of work coming off a groin injury in a game that they were dominating anyways. And like you said, whoever they put out there, they could run at will, right? They were just running at will. It didn't matter who it was. Even Hilliard was running wild out there. So I expect Hunt, assuming he gets some full practices in, to handle the bulk of the work this week. But if Johnson's mixed in, if he can get, 10 to 12 carries in this offense, even though, it is the Colts, I think that's enough upside to be flex worthy. I wouldn't want him as like my RB2, but as a flex, I think he's okay.
Yeah, hopefully he's not your RB2, so you're definitely in a world of hurt. We can't expect what he did last week to be a regular occurrence because, again, that was just a matter of the game script and all that. But, so I'll make a confession now because I think waivers have cleared in all my leagues. So in my top 5 running back waiver wire options, in that episode, told you Johnson was probably going to be the top pick this week, depending on how things shook out. So in all the leagues I'm in, which is too many, I pretty much made a claim for him in all of them, except for one, I think, where I just didn't have the space. And I got him in most of those leagues. So did I probably massively overbid for him? Yeah. But I'd rather have a piece of that backfield, than take a chance on RB2 in, for the Chargers, Justin Jackson, right? So I'm kind of like cautiously optimistic, but not this week. All right. So I grabbed him everywhere. All right. But I'm not playing him this week unless I absolutely have to, which is one league, which it's a lost cause. And then when we talk about the Baltimore backfield, I know that you've said over and over, like, let's just avoid it. It's a 3-man committee. We don't know who's getting, the amount of volume each week, and nobody's getting 10 carries or more on a regular basis. But they're playing Cincinnati, so I got to ask, you're missing, obviously, Chubb or Ekeler. Aaron Jones is on bye. You're hurting at running back. Do you plug Mark Ingram in there? Because Cincinnati, one of the worst rush defenses there are, I think outlining the 4th most rushing yards and basically a touchdown per game. Ingram could at least get in the end zone.
Yeah, you know who I wouldn't start over Kenyan Drake? Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram. What if I told you that last week Mark Ingram played less snaps than Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins? You probably won't believe me because you're like, but he got the touchdown. Okay, great. He got you 10 points. He got you 10 points with a touchdown. Yeah, it's the Bengals, but like when you're only playing 20% of the snaps, like what? Like there's nobody. If his name wasn't Mark Ingram, like we don't talk about should we play Gus Edwards. We don't talk about should we play J.K. Dobbins. It's just because his name is Mark Ingram, and he's had a very good career, and he was drafted like in the 5th, 6th round, and that's the only reason why we still talk about him is like, yeah, you got to play Mark Ingram. I mean, sure, can he score a touchdown? Of course. So can Kenyan Drake. So can Dearness Johnson. Any of these guys can score a touchdown. But that's really what you're banking on because he's not getting enough opportunity, right, to really be fantasy relevant. I mean, if he doesn't score a touchdown, you're getting 4 or 5 fantasy points. You can find that on the waiver wire easily, right? There's a million guys. So, no, I'm not playing Mark Ingram even in this matchup. I mean, unless I absolutely have to. At least with Kenyan Drake, I know he's going to get like 15 or 16 carries. I'll take that in a maybe not equally good matchup, but in a good enough matchup over a guy who's only going to get 6 or 7 carries and maybe a catch. So
yeah, no, I get all that, and that's the same thing we were saying that the floor is almost not there. You're hoping for a touchdown. Let me ask you this, Go, because looking today, I've been hearing about Lamar Jackson being questionable. He's banged up. I mean, they haven't said they don't think he'll play, but it's possible. I mean, he's on the injury report now midweek. If it so happens that Jackson sits, does that make you in some way more interested in Ingram because you think they're just going to rely on the running game more? You think that it might happen? Obviously Jackson's not there to take some of that yardage away from him.
I mean, maybe who's I don't even know who's the backup QB for the Ravens. Do you even know?
That's a good question. I know it's not Joe Flacco because Joe Flacco is now the starting quarterback for the Jets. That's 2020 for you. Who could?
Oh, it's Robert Griffin. So no.
Is it still?
It's Robert Griffin. It's either Robert Griffin or Sam Koch. I don't even know who that is, to be honest.
I think that's a punter.
Oh, okay. Well, he threw a pass last week. They must have ran a fake punt. Okay, so it's Robert Griffin. So no, I don't feel better. I mean, look at last week. Gus Edwards had 9 carries. Mark Ingram had 8. Mark Ingram got 1 target. Right? Like, no, I don't want any. I don't want any part of this. Like, you know who I want? I want Gus Edwards on my bench because A, he's actually looked really good this year, and B, if something were to happen to Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards is probably in line for like 15 carries in an elite offense. So I want Gus Edwards on my bench. That's what I want.
All right. Yeah, I'll buy that.
But I'm not starting him. I'm not saying to start Gus. Don't start anybody in this right now.
No. And that's the thing. It's tough. That's where, and I bring it up because of the matchup. You look, okay, the Bengals, great matchup for running backs, but who is the running back? And when you got 3 guys, it's too hard to pick one. So like you said, the upside just maybe isn't there. All right, who is the upside there for? We'll talk about our boom of the week. It's not Kenyan Drake this week. We know that. So who you got?
Well, I'm going with a guy who I didn't expect much from this year, and he really hasn't done much other than score some touchdowns, and that's Todd Gurley against Carolina. And I talked about when we talked about Kenyan Drake. Aside from that game last week, they've given up a top 3 running back finish in every game. Now, I don't expect Todd Gurley to post top 3 numbers, but that's okay. I think he can post top 10 numbers this week against a terrible Carolina defense. And, even though Brian Hill and Ito Smith, I kind of mix those guys together, are getting some touches. Todd Gurley is still getting the bulk of the touches. I think you can safely confidently play Todd Gurley this week.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. And especially you think about if you watch the game, unfortunately for Atlanta, the way they've been playing last week and before. Okay, Julio is clearly not close to 100%. He might miss this week. He probably should, right? If he's that injured, he should just sit. Ridley, obviously not 100%. He didn't catch a pass, all right? So if those guys are out, and then Gage, I guess he's playing, but he's still not the same ever since that concussion. So you got your top 3 receivers all banged up. The top 2 might not play. At the very least, your stud wideout, they're going to have to rely on Gurley more. So I think this is a great play for this week. I'm going deeper here. This is totally a close your eyes and see if you make contact kind of grand slam pick. Okay, maybe not that bad, but my boy Cam Akers, he's back. All right, he's going to play. You saw last week. I guess I'm sort of doubling down on Rams running backs. I thought Darrell Henderson, not just me, but it was a smash spot, right? Henderson against the Giants. I mean, come on. Okay, so Sean McVay did what he does and just totally flipped the script and doesn't want any running back to succeed. But it's because he's holding out hope for Akers. He's waiting, right? He's kind of keeping the seat warm for him. Now that he's back, I think they're going to see what he can do, and I think he's going to impress. So wasn't a leg injury, right? It was a rib thing. It's more of a pain tolerance thing. I think that this is the week that he can do some things. So I'm not saying start him, but I'm saying maybe start him. Keep your eye on him. Keep your eye on him. All right, let's talk about some busts. Who's going to bust for you?
Yeah, I'm going with Melvin Gordon. I know he had that big game on Thursday night, but really he had a nice game, but he had that big run and score at the end that really didn't mean anything. Phillip Lindsay looks like he'll be back this week. He was close to playing last week, but they wanted to give him one more week. So now you're going to have Phillip Lindsay in the mix. You're going against New England. I'm sure New England's looking at Brett Rippon and saying, not going to beat us. So let's just take away the guy like Melvin Gordon, make Rippon beat us. So I think it's going to be a tough night for Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, and then we do need to add that's if the game gets played, given the Patriots' whole situation. I think we got 2 players right now with COVID. Hopefully that's it. But yeah, let's just assume that game doesn't get postponed. And then my pick is actually a guy we already talked about. I hate to say this, but again, my loyalty doesn't bind me to my decision. So I love Joshua Kelley, generally speaking, but not this week. I want to see what happens, even though you might think, well, now Ekeler's gone. He's the guy, right? This is a great chance for him. He's going to get more touches. Yeah. But he got a lot of touches last week, and this is a harder defense to run against. The Saints have actually been really tough against the run. And if the game gets away from them, right, the Saints are up, it just might not be good. So I'm holding back on Kelley as far as starting him this week and see what happens. Hopefully he does well and, all's good for next week. But I'm going to have to put my boy on the bench. All right, don't keep us on the bench, guys. Put us in your starting lineup. Hit subscribe, notification bell. That way, every time one of these new videos pops up, which is almost every day, you're going to get the notification and you're going to be the first to find out. Chris just put out a good video less than 24 hours ago about some of the players we've talked about. Are you panicking about Drake, Julio Jones? You should be. All right, but what do you do about it? So catch that video to see what it's all about. And, of course, we're going to do start sit for wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, everything you need. Our end game here is to help you win. All right, thanks for watching.